Welcome to the Zveda podcast. I'm Jamie.
And I'm Lorena.
We're a community for women by women. We're here to help each other rise to impact generations. Hi, I'm Jamie Matashek.
And I'm Lorena Jeck.
And we are so excited to be here today. It's March 1st, and we are launching Zveda.
Yes, we're so excited this afternoon to have our first podcast. So thanks for joining us. Really what we wanted to do this afternoon was just to talk through why we're doing what we're doing and a little bit more about my story and Jamie's story so you can get to know us a little bit more. And we just want to invite you on a journey with us.
Yes, so we are starting a community for women by women. Our passion is to create a community, really a new generation of women. There's so many things going on in the world, and this is a great opportunity for us to open up our knowledge, open up our hands and our arms and say, come and join us on a journey. What we plan to do is create this community for young women and help you transition from high school into college and college into the workplace, and then really address some of those challenges that you're going to face in your career journey.
Yeah, and some of these challenges are ones that, maybe your parents didn't prepare you for, or maybe in the school system, being great as it is in a lot of ways, just some things that you weren't prepared for when stepping into the marketplace. And so we have just a passion to step in and fill that gap.
Yes. So we're not perfect. I think we'll be the first to admit it. And we're going to just be who we are.
That's right.
On this podcast. So you're going to see us laugh and mess up. And
probably cry. I'm a crier.
Yeah. Cry a little bit. We can cry together, ladies.
Yeah.
But really our desire is to help you step into your call, right? Like your true purpose. And so often I know, both of us actually have seen women maybe stay in careers too long in a job because they just felt tied to the paycheck, or not really even know which step to take. Should I go to school? Should I go to college? Should I start my own business?
Should I take a gap year even between college and starting a full-time job?
Right. And so if we don't have the answers, then we are going to connect you with someone who does. And so this community is going to not just be us talking, two talking heads, but we want to engage you, invite you to send us your questions, your challenges, and we'll have special guests throughout the journey and throughout the podcast to give you perspectives on a multitude of topics. So I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that, Lorena, but...
Yeah, I've already been thinking of just some people I know in my network. Jamie, I know you probably have some as well in Austin and other cities across the nation that we'd love to interview and showcase their stories as well, because every story has the power of a testimony behind it. And so being able to share that can unlock something in your heart and give you the wisdom that you need to move forward and navigate transition. So I think what we want to do now is just to share a little bit more about each of us. So Jamie, tell us about you.
Yes. So this is the reason why I was really interested in creating this community. Here are a few reasons. One, I've been in corporate America for over 20 years. Started out in project management and account management for ad agencies, and just have worked at startups and communications firms. And there are a lot of things that I've learned that I want to help women skip. There's some challenges that surfaced that I had to figure out on my own. I won't say exactly, but I'm in my 40s.
No shame. You look good.
And, when I was growing up, I grew up in a small town. We didn't have a lot of opportunity or even knowledge about mentors and mentorship and what that looked like and the importance of that. And so I had to figure out a lot of things on my own, how to negotiate, how to present myself, how to communicate, just how to how to be in the workplace, working with all ages and generations and the challenges that brought and different talents. So creative to, engineering. It's just no one was there to really guide me. And so I was really passionate to start this organization to help help you overcome some of those things quickly. And I always like to say, if I can help other women skip steps or skip a few rungs on the ladder, then I feel like I'm really meeting my own purpose and living out of my purpose here on this planet. So that's really why I am passionate about creating this community. I think both of us are really excited about an opportunity to bridge generations. We talk about that a lot. There's a lot of wisdom in those that are older than us, that have experienced things that we haven't yet. And there's also a lot of wisdom in youth. And we often overlook that. So one of the things that I think I really want to be able to bring forward is just that longevity in career, that over 20 years, like what does that look like? And really, how can I help you?
That's great, Jamie. And before I share a little bit about myself, I think what you touched on, just the power of generations intermingling and having that connection so that there can be that exchange between someone who has just seen more sons than I have, S-U-N, not S-O-N. But I really think that there's a value to that. And part of it is kind of how I'm wired and experiences that I had growing up. I just naturally inside of me always wanted mentors, always sought them out. My first one, I think I was 11 or 12 years old. I reached out to a lady who was at the time at the church that I attended mentoring 8th grade girls. And I was in 6th grade and I just was like, you're amazing. You know the word of God like so well. I want to be connected with you. And can you just speak good truth into my life? And she was like, I'll absolutely mentor you. Like you're in 6th grade, but that's great. I'll have you for 3 years. And that was so sweet to me. And she at the time was in her early 60s. And just that exchange of information and wisdom really benefited me. And I think too, Jamie being in her 40s, me being in my 20s, even we're modeling this as a company. It's not just me going off and doing my own thing and thinking I have it all because I'm young, I've got zeal. There's so much wisdom that Jamie brings to the table. And so we even want Zveda to be a model of what it is that we value and stand for when it comes to generations being connected. So I love that you brought that up.
Yes.
Just a little bit about me. So as I said, my name is Lorena Jeck and I am in my late 20s. I went to the University of Texas here in Austin. And
I'm an Aggie. So.
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, we don't need to bring up house divided conversations, but because we're so unified, right?
I know.
Yes. But yeah, so I went to University of Texas, and my story that I feel like a lot of things that I can bring to the table is that I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do after I graduated. I got a degree in corporate communications, and the benefit of that is I learned a lot of really great skill sets that could take me into a lot of different types of roles. But then on the flip side, I wasn't trained specifically for an entry-level position. And so I had to figure out, did I want to go into sales, marketing, public relations, just general communications? Like I didn't really know like what I could frame my experience as for, immediately stepping into the marketplace. And so a lot of my journey, those first 2 years, especially after college, was challenging. And there was a lot of turbulence is what I felt. And I felt the unknown. I felt just the challenge of walking through that season. And not to say that, other seasons in life aren't challenging, but I think that in particular, it really can undermine some levels of confidence when you don't really know what it is you're stepping into. And it's kind of the first time, at least for me, like stepping out of college, where it was like, okay, like I really get to determine what success looks like. And I get to determine what it is I'm going to go after. So I feel like I can bring some of that to the table. And then just being younger, I graduated from UT just a handful of years ago. And so having a greater kind of connection and pulse with people who are still in college today or recent graduates, just continues to have both of us be relatable to young women in this community. So that's a little bit about me, and we're just super excited to start this company.
Yeah. So I think it might be important for us to actually tell you what we do.
Yes.
Or a little bit of what we do. So I am currently in operations. So I'm a COO for a small boutique PR firm here in town. Very involved in the community and in my church. I love music, so I am a worship leader and singer, and I just, music has such power. So I love that part of my life. I have a 14-year-old son, single mom. So that's a whole other level of excitement. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But that is just a little bit more about me and where I currently am in my career. So hopefully you can relate in one of those, and we'll be bringing up all sorts of content around some of those things. But Lorena, tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah. So after my season of, not really sure what I'm doing and working different jobs to pay for expenses in the meantime, I then back in 2016 started working at a digital media agency as a project coordinator, and then was promoted into a project manager about 2 years later. And that's what I'm still doing in this season. And I'm enjoying the work. And it's kind of interesting that we both have agency experience. Mm-hmm. And so I've also got experience working with developers and designers, very creative people, and then also salespeople. And so kind of seeing the whole gamut in an organization. And then outside of work, I enjoy floral arranging. It's just so fun. I actually took an arrangement to my parents this afternoon. They just moved from Houston to Austin. So I just brought them some flowers because I love to do that. And then I'm also dating a guy who has a very kind and tender heart. And so maybe even that's some content we could bring up later.
Ladies, we will be talking about the dating world.
Relationships. Oh my gosh. Like my heart is just, I'm being challenged so much. So we can talk more about that.
Yes.
And I also lead worship at my church. So that's another thing that Jamie and I have in common. And we just both have a passion for just adoring the King of Kings and bringing him glory through song and through encounters. So we like to do that and just see that unity also across Austin and other cities. That's a little bit more about just what I'm doing in this season.
Great. And Lorena is a connector too. So
yes, I love to connect people. It's so fun. Like I'll be at just parties or gatherings with people, and I'll always be like, hey, like, what's your dream? Like, what is your heartbeat for? What do you want to do? And I don't know. I just love to ask questions like that. And, or as people like are talking about what's going on in their lives, there's often like, a challenge of like, well, I need a place to live, or I need a roommate, or I need a job, like all these different things. And a lot of times I'll just be like, okay, what specifically do you desire? I get them to elaborate on what it is that they want and what they're believing God for. And then I'll just ask the Lord, like even after that conversation, I'll be like, God, like, is there anybody that I know that I can connect them to that may know someone else who knows someone else who knows someone else? Or like, is there someone that I know that could be an answer to their prayer? And so, yeah. I love to connect people. Yes. It's fun.
So to switch gears a little bit, we wanted to talk more about why we're starting this in more detail. Why is this important? Why should you join the community? How can we help? Et cetera, et cetera. So I think a little bit about what you were talking about a few minutes ago was just broadening our circles, like bridging the generations. And I think one of the things we really want to call to mind is that we often gravitate our closest circle typically look like us, right? Like either career or background,
beliefs
or culture. And we miss out. We miss out on a lot of different perspectives and wisdom and direction if we're not expanding beyond what we look like. So we thought the community could be a great way to change that. Bringing women together of different ages, different walks of life, regionally, culturally, all of those differences make a difference.
They do.
Because, someone that doesn't look like me, a white 40-year-old, is going to have a very different story. They're going to have different challenges than I had. And we want to bring those forward and we want to talk them out, because those stories, our stories, the details of them, each of us will help someone else. That's what helps other people skip rungs on the ladder, whether it's in personal life and relationship or finance or business or health. Those stories matter, and we want to really bring those forward. So I don't know if you have anything to add on that particular topic, Lorena, but
yeah, I mean, I think when you're around new circles of people who may have different interests than you, even if it's a nuanced difference, like you can be exposed to new pieces of information that can challenge the way that you're currently thinking. A lot of times I often think about, and I always ask myself, is there a limiting belief that I'm believing that's actually, maybe something that served me in the past season to get me to where I'm at, but is it going to limit me moving forward? And do I need to transform that part of my thinking? A lot of times getting around and surfacing new community, new thoughts, new ideas of people who have a like kind of drive and I would say kind of core belief system can be really life-giving and really stimulating. And so, yeah, I think we want to foster this community to give people the opportunity to share their stories, to connect, and then to sharpen and challenge one another towards the purpose that they've been given and created with. So I think with that too, like when you're sharing your stories and you're connecting with one another, values then are created. A shared language then is created among a community. And really, Jamie touched on this at the very beginning of this podcast, but the core of what we want to do is to really create a new generation. Like that is in our heart. There's always things emerging on all different kinds of thoughts and topics, and especially in our culture today. And we really believe that it's out of a remnant or out of a small few that then grows and blooms into something even greater that can really be used as a catalyst for change in the current culture. And that's really what we want to see. And so creating a new generation is what we're after in this community.
Yeah, and it goes right along with our name, Zveda. You may be wondering, what the heck is that?
Zveda.
So it means she rises in Czechoslovakian. And so our tagline is she rises to impact generations. So we not only want to rise together as women to support one another, but make changes that are going to impact generations that are coming after us. And that's really our purpose. That's what we are all here for, is we're not just living on this planet for ourselves. It's to learn and grow and live out of abundance, but to help other people. And that's what life truly is about. And that's what we're here to support. And along those lines, there has been a stigma for a long time, as far as I can remember, that women are hard to work with. And we've all heard it. The first thing I hear from teachers or other professions where there is a lot of women in the office, you hear things like, oh, it's a battlefield and there's a lot of drama. And
people are scrapping after one another over resources and recognition even.
Fighting for position instead of working together for success. And so we just want to end that. Enough is enough, right?
Yeah. And really show how women can be for one another. And you can't have that unless if there's that connection there, and especially connection across generations, because then there's that mutual understanding, mutual respect, and even, dare I say, a love for one another that really just blooms and comes out so that the whole just goal of relating changes in the workplace.
Yeah. And I think a new way to think about it is, if you're currently in the workplace, which many of you probably are, you're not vying or competing with the woman next to you. You are working to be successful in what you are the best at. So just keep that in mind. we are working to excel in the areas that we are passionate about and interested in. So whether I'm a designer, a project manager, an engineer, again, you're not competing to put someone else down. We're trying to work on our skills and get better and rise to where we are the best. And I think that's just a different perspective. And we have an opportunity, ladies, to really support one another, to come together as one voice, to encourage, to inspire, and to help each other, I think, find what is that you're really interested in. You know, maybe you're on a career path right now and you think, well, my next step is here I am. And next time I need to be a manager, to make more money. And I think we can squash those beliefs because you can make more money in a lot of different ways.
It's true.
And just getting that next title or being a specific leader over people may not be what you really are passionate about. So we want to help navigate those things, talk about the topics that come up in the workplace, and really just provide, like we've said, an environment and a community where we can encourage each other.
Exactly. Yeah. Well said, Jamie. I think that's great. So one of the things that I've been pondering, talking about how our focus and our desire is to make room for all of you. And how is it that we create this new generation of women? I know one thing that comes to my mind a lot, and I touched on this as part of my story as a young girl, is the value of mentoring. I think some people may not know, the meaning of that word in today's culture, or there may be, different kinds of connotations for that word based on what people have experienced. I know, like, when I was sharing with my boyfriend, I was like, yeah, I have, a mentor for this and a mentor for this and this, and like, 2 or 3 different ones. He was like, is it like you're going to therapy? And I was like, no. And so I had to, share my definition of what a mentor is. And really, a lot of ways in my life, a mentor is someone who has gone ahead and who has demonstrated success in something that you aspire to grow in. And so I know for me, like, I've got 2 or 3 different spiritual mentors, both men and women, because I believe that there's things that I can learn from both men and women. And then I've got, I do have a trainer, but that's, that's a little different. And it's group training, not just my own trainer.
For your health.
Yeah, for my health. Yeah. And then I've got a couple of people speaking into my life, mentoring me in my dating relationship. And then I've also got, Jamie, even to me, is a business mentor in some ways. And so in that way, it's really defining, like, okay, what is mentorship? And in a lot of ways, we want to provide that through Zveda, and then also to connect you with potential mentors in Austin and in other cities as we grow and expand. And so really just like cultivating like a hunger for that in this new generation. And something that I was reading in this book, basically it's this lady who wrote a book about like raising a modern day princess. And she talked a lot about the value of mentoring someone who, like I was saying earlier, like someone who mentors you in your physical health and well-being, someone who mentors you even emotionally. I'm an advocate for counseling, but also someone who can just, talk the things of your soul, your mind, will, and emotions with you and teach you how to manage your emotions. Someone who can, mentor and encourage you spiritually is another one. And so it's like seeking out people that, number one, you can grow that connection with, and it's mutual, that you're sharing into their life, they're sharing into yours. But then these different areas of your life, even like a financial mentor too, is another one that I can think of. And so, we're only as strong as the people that we allow to speak into our lives. And so that's a huge part of us wanting to create this new generation, is through the value of mentorship.
Yeah, I think it's great. And, I think we're starting to squash the stigmas around getting counseling where needed or support where needed. I think one of the things we often is an error for women is that we try to cover things up. because if we feel like, oh, if I say I don't know how to do that, then I'm not going to be viewed as serious, or I'm not going to get that opportunity,
or seen as valuable,
and it's the complete opposite. If someone thinks that, well, it's probably not the right place for you, to be 100% honest, right? So the value of being able to be brave and reach out and say, I don't know this and I need help. For me, I'll give an example, finance. I've always been weaker on the finance side, personal finance. And we're just not taught that. We were not taught it. I know it's still not being taught in schools, but there are great resources out there to teach you how to organize your finances, how to be prepared. And ladies, especially young women, you have the benefit of youth.
And time in front of us.
So if you learn now, really in all of these categories, you're going to be so far ahead of so many people, just because you have the more time ahead of you. So just definite value in mentorship. And we're excited to, like Lorena said, just provide those conversations. So we'll have some of those experts on the podcast, and hopefully when we kick off our speaking tour later on, then we'll be giving you access to, one-on-one opportunities to sit in intimate settings and talk to some of these professionals, from the spiritual side to finance to health and wellness, all of the things that really impact us as people and ultimately our careers.
Yeah, that's great, Jamie. I know a couple things we also wanted to talk through just briefly before we wrap up this first podcast. It's just a couple of areas of content that we want to cover in our first couple of months, I'd say, of recording. The first one being defining success for your future. And so talking about that kind of mindset shift of when you're in the education sphere, either high school, college, whatever other program that you're in, success is often mapped out for you with teachers that provide the curriculum for you ahead of time. And, to be successful, you just have to do X, Y, and Z. And if you, get a good grade on this exam, or, if you have this GPA by the time that you graduate, then you're successful. But when you shift into life after being out of the education sphere, then you really have to become that person that defines, quote unquote, the curriculum, or maps out what are my goals? What is going to be a measure of success for me in the future? And then also, how am I going to get there? So it's kind of two-pronged in that way. It's you then become, using the compass that God has given you, and that the Holy Spirit walks with you in that journey. But yeah, it's figuring out what that looks like moving forward.
Yeah. I think another one is to be a producer in the workplace. What does that mean? Ultimately, it's taking charge of yourself, knowing that there isn't going to be someone out there that's going to save me, or that's responsible for the outcomes of my success. It is up to me. I can have control over my path and my future. And yeah, I think just learning those skills to take hold of what's really important to you and your career journey.
Yeah. And on that note of producing as well, again, it's kind of like a shift in the way that you think, because, growing up as a child with your parents or caregivers, up until you graduate, whether high school, college, or whatever career ready program that you've been in, you're consuming that experience essentially. So you get to dictate what you want that experience to look like. I know when I was at UT, I was like, well, I'm paying for college and I want to make sure that I'm in this student organization and I've got these services for me, blah, 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 and then when you start working at an organization, you then become a producer. You're not a consumer anymore. They're paying you to be there. And so they get to determine in some ways, your job responsibilities, job performance, all of those things that to justify the pay and keep you a part of the team, that mindset shift. And so that's, another angle for that topic. I think Another piece that we want to talk through is how to navigate pain, specifically the pain of disappointment. I remember a friend of mine one time, he described suffering as the gap between what you desire to experience and what you're currently experiencing. And I really like that illustration because it doesn't belittle anybody's experience of suffering. I have friends who have experienced some pretty traumatic things, and my heart, really feels for them when they go through things like that. And I've been through things myself, but I think it's just so simple to think between your expectation and what you're currently experiencing, that is suffering. And so like when I talk about my experience from when I graduated from UT until getting a more career type role, like that was frustrating. And there was a lot of disappointment in that season. So how did I deal with that? Like, what did I do with that to where it was constructive and it didn't tank me? And how did I focus on, building a support system around me that could walk with me through this and remind me of my identity through that season?
Yeah. And I think that topic goes really well with the next one, and that's bouncing back from challenges.
Mm-hmm. Being resilient.
Being resilient. How do you, because we are going to have disappointment. We are. Mm-hmm. We often try to protect ourselves from that.
But then you're not really living.
But you're not living. And so whether in the career perspective, it might be, you make a mistake and you get called on the carpet for it. Well, how do you navigate that? Number one, how do you ensure that it doesn't happen again? Mm-hmm. And how do you show your leader that you're serious about the mistake that was made and doing a good job?
Yeah.
And it might be something as severe as, I just was laid off. I've been through that.
Yep.
A few layoffs, and
I've been through one.
Walking in and, I'm going to inform you, today's your last day. Okay. Yeah. But we all experience those challenges and disappointments, and we want to not only talk through them, but also help you understand what you need to do to prepare for them so it doesn't take you out at the knees, right?
Yeah. Right, exactly. Another topic we want to talk about is how to expand relational circles. Yes. I think we touched on this a little bit earlier, just with the value of generations connecting with one another and mentorship. But really, how do you form genuine, heartfelt relationships with people? That's always something that's been a passion for me, even like knowing how to connect with guys, in a very healthy way, to where it's like, okay, I see you as a brother in Christ. I'm going to respect you and encourage you and not just see you as, oh, are you potential spouse? Well, if not, I'm going to write you off. Like, that's not healthy, right. And then also what would happen, when you are married and you want to have couple friends? Well, do you just not talk with the dude in the room? No. That doesn't work. That was a little tangent, yes. but how to expand relational circles for networking purposes, specifically for career or any other desire. I know I just, like Jamie said earlier, I just love connecting people. And so I can share some tips and tricks along the way of how I expand people that I know in relational circles.
Yeah, for sure. And I definitely, each of these topics will be a podcast of its own. There'll be multiple, I'm sure, out of these. But for expanding your circles, I definitely want to talk about the journey that I recently went on for 6 months and meeting over 30 different individuals and how willing people are to say yes when you say, hey, I saw you on LinkedIn. I admire your career. I'd like to get to know you. Can I take you to coffee? 99% of people say yes.
Because they want to talk about themselves.
Yeah.
And they want to help people. That feels really good to help people. So it's easier than you think. So we'll talk through some ways to do that.
Excited about that topic. And then last but definitely not least, I love this one. And that is owning your worth. And part of owning our worth is first understanding that we are worthy, right? That we have great offerings for this world. People need us. And there are people that are only going to connect with us based on our stories, based on what we've been through. And so we want to take you on several topics to go on that journey, just understanding your worth, uncovering it, sharing it, and encouraging women around you to do the same.
Absolutely. And it's like when you know that you know that you know your identity, there's a new, just holy confidence that comes forth. And that's really what the world needs to see. That is the salt and the light that catches people's attention to know who Jesus Christ is, because he's living through us and we're his body. So, yeah, I agree that owning that worth is key.
Yes.
So Jamie.
So yes.
How would we like to wrap up this podcast, our first one?
Yeah, I know. It's so exciting. So just, what's going through my head is we are Zveda. We are She Rises. Ladies, we are excited to start and impact and grow a new generation of women that supports one another through this crazy thing called life.
That's right. Yeah.
So
we're excited to be on the journey with you guys, and just can't wait to see what comes forth. So
I know. So thank you for joining us. We're excited for the next podcast. Please send us your questions. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. And we're just excited to see where we can all go together. So see you next time.
All right.
Thanks for listening to the Zveda podcast. Keep your questions coming so we can rise together. Visit Zveda.com to talk to us and join our community. That's Zveda.com. We'll see you next week.